Howdy of you delicious people, I'm here to review Blood in Black Lace, or as I would like to call it, Blood in Black Lace. But, unfortunately, no matter how I'm going to go on and slice and dice this or pronounce it, it'll still be Blood on the title, and a lot of people will probably go on and tell me, don't put Blood on a YouTube title because it's not going to be good for you. Well, at some points I have to go on and review everything, but then also it's been such a long time since I've slapped the word blood on a title. I really just am like, whatever. Let's just kind of put something on here so I have something to review, right? This movie also kind of clickbaited me by its villain design because I'm like, hey, this guy looks like the DC comic books character Question, or it looks like Rorschach, or it looks like any number of other things like Kevin Bacon's Hollow Man. If you guys haven't seen that Invisible Man movie, go ahead and check it out. But so we have a film where a killer is to go on and murder some models here, some supermodels or what have you. And I'm like, okay, that seems to be just kind of a rare bit of concept there. But logically, I will go on and state, like, well, maybe people have never gone on and seen the movie Looker either, where we go on and we have a very sci-fi like angle for supermodels to get killed because of the looks, and a plastic surgeon is to try to go on and save these women and so on and so forth. It's been a while since I've seen the movie Looker, but anyways. We then go on to also have me want to compare this movie to the remake of Rabid, because we have Laura Vandervolt's character, who is to seemingly be this clothing designer, and coincidentally also the movie also has CM Punk in it, for those of you that know that guy. Laura is to be a clothing designer, and at some point she is to put enough clothes together to make a runway, and then a zombie infection starts to occur within even that runway. And yeah, Blood and Black Lace is to not at all be a zombie movie, but if anything, I just kind of want to throw that in there for people who've probably never heard of that film or heard of its original one. Because Armpit creates zombie invasion. I don't know. Very weird. But so, anyways, Blood and Black Lace, I think, focuses way too much on either a killer killing people or a detective that is to consistently come up short. But of course, his name is Sylvester, so we have to suffer some succotash anyways. So, within this film, beyond either the killing or the investigation, there's not much else to really pull away from here beyond certain people being either desperate to get alibis, or people confessing their love to somebody, or us eventually getting to the third act where we're to be revealed who killer or killers are, and then like they are to just play this movie out the way they do, and like the way that it just ends is just kind of a bit of a low of the film, I feel. Because by the end of the film, you're just left with not enough of anyone to really root for. But then again, also, all of these models were seemingly to be drug addicts anyways, so like I was to go on and honestly have no one to really just be like, well, I don't really care for the victims because they chose their lifestyle, and really it's either that the killer is going to get them or the drugs are, so it's only a matter of time. But yeah, but it just kind of deflated for me to really have a person to root for at any point. But regardless, Blood and Black Lace was to be just rather interesting in aspects, even though logically, I just don't think that it has anything more than just some potential. I feel that was probably wasted. Uh, I will go on and call Blood and Black Lace fine. If you have this thing called time on your hands, then check this thing out because it's easily available on an app called Tubi, Tubi. You don't need to go on and really need to suffer needing to go to a specific place to get this specific app because it seems to be everywhere. This is to seemingly be a foreign film that actually is either dubbed in English or these people are to speak in English. So you'll go on and enjoy having to make your way through this film. And so, really, with that said, uh, check this out if you like, but only if you just have the time to kill. I just thought that the villain looked just so interesting that I was just like, oh man, like however this is to play out, I really don't care because villain looks so interesting. So here's on the negative side some problems with this film that I have to go on and bring up here because there's a couple. In the beginning of the movie, we would have a guy named Marco who goes outside this studio and is fixing this sign. And he fixes the sign and then goes back into Christina and says like, hey, like, should I go on and fix that sign? And she says, yeah, fix it tomorrow. And I'm like, didn't he already just fix that sign? Is there another sign that needs to be fixed? What's going on here? I'm so confused. And then there's also the point where Nicole is making her way through the antique shop and she all of a sudden hears this really loud crash and she's like, oh, what is that? And around the time that this crash happens, there's also the music that picks up, and I'm like, okay, like, is that a crash or is it just the music that is effing with me? Like, what's going on? Like, I'm so confused. And then when Nicole continues to make her way back down to the antique store, there ends up being this weird chain reaction of all this stuff falling around her. So I'm just like, okay, I guess that was just some sound in the antique thing of items that are just kind of falling over here, and I'm just left to be like, okay, so the next thing is we have a one point where Greta is to have hauled, let's just say, a sack of potatoes, to be a little bit more vague about what goes on in this film at some points. She hauls this sack of potatoes into her home to then come to find out within her house that there seems to, I guess, be a harp playing. But then again, you also in the movie have the music that picks up, so it's just like, is it harp playing or is it just the music? I just don't know. Then lastly, we go on and have a tub scene because everybody just needs to get their yellow duckies out. And so this tub scene has somebody who gets drowned, gets murdered, and so they end up going on and they have to have this woman get sliced in the arm. And when they cut to this woman's arm, the arm is already pre-cut, and then there's also no blood coming out of it. So like somebody got a little happy, or a little early with the makeup, and didn't inject any blood coming out of it. So like I guess that kind of thing ends up coming out the way it does. But other than that, yeah. Really, this movie is to go on. Yeah, it has its slights, it has its goofs, it has its geefs. But if anything, I guess this movie's brief enough to probably just be interesting to me at some point. So with that said, this movie is fine. It's available on Tubi. Check it out there. But I think it's about that time to just rush into spoilers. and thoroughly dissect and rattle this movie off, because if anything, there's probably to have me probably get too much lost in the weeds of dialogue that is actually to be within this movie that I have to rattle off and talk about. So without a doubt, I probably should get into all of that. Let me know in the comments below what is to be your most interesting, if this really fits well in the slasher genre. Like, to me, like, this feels more like a real killer killing people, and there's a whole story behind it of why they're doing it. And like, the first victim kind of dominoes into all the others, because the first victim has this diary, and whoever is to know that the diary exists needs to get killed. And then, like, domino of like, well, hey, we just need to complete the set anyways, so why not just kill all these models? But so with this film, uh yeah, just let me know in the comments below what is to be your most interesting kind of killer that is to possibly be similar to this, or any kind of slasher movie of any kind, or maybe you just saw a really interesting horror, crime, whatever kind of movie, and maybe you want to let me know in the comments below, because that does help out the channel at some point. With that said, I think it's about that time to just push into spoilers, because I've already spent 11 minutes just rattling off about this film in a very vague like sense. So it's about that time to get out my cast list, whatever I insist to go on, help me rattle this movie off, because without a doubt, I think it's about that time to whip it out and get this uploaded for today. So I'm gonna pause here, get out my cast list and all kinds of other stuff, because I think it's about that time. Thank you for watching this, because I'm sure people may go on and kind of fade off into the black after this. But if anything, I do appreciate anybody going on and taking the time to watch this video, because logically, if not, then what else do I have better to do on my day to day? But anyways, let's go on and let's talk about this film in depth. Oh, I've completely forgotten about my future reviews segment that I seem to just kind of have forcibly placed in here quite often. And also, it'll be future reviews that may not go on and end up even on the drawing board of actually me doing them. But regardless, rattling them off. I hope to go on and just add some more stuff into the Rolodex or whatever of what is to be this YouTube channel, with content like there's to be this Jackie Chan movie called Police Story. Not quite sure if logically this movie will actually be any good, and also I'd be a person that is very biased, that doesn't exactly enjoy specifically like police movies and shows and whatever, but like logically I'm just like, well, maybe there's just going to end up being something interesting about this that'll be worth my time, as well as also it might just be worth checking it out, because I wanted to for the longest time just watch some kind of Jackie Chan movie, and that one in my mind just kind of comes up as like, let's try this. It's also to have me be able to find it dubbed in English through the avenues of which that I go through. So I'm like, okay, next film that I'm going to go on and see at some point. They'll also go on and have me possibly check out a a Wes Craven movie, I believe, called Deadly Friend, where a girl ends up slowly but surely becoming a robot. I don't know why, but if anything, there's to be one kill that transpires within that movie that I'm like, oh my god, I need to check this out. What the is going on in this film? And if anything, for those of you that probably don't know the film, I could just probably say, or do know the film, I could probably just say the word basketball and like, huh? Yeah. Because if anything, I kind of sifted through the film before going on and actually fully fledgingly deciding whether or not I was gonna take the time into this movie, because I'm like, I really need to know uh, kind of the entails of this film before I really go on and decide to take the time to invest in something like this. So lastly, I'll also go on and at some point, like, I want to try to go on and do the superhero movies that are kind of more rarefied air, because really I've kind of done every one of the other ones. So there is a Doctor Strange movie that I found that isn't your normal Doctor Strange film, because I think it was done in like the 60s or 70s or whatever. And yeah, it's one of those kind of unreleased films that no one has probably ever heard of, because it's like a made for TV kind of thing. So it's just kind of like, okay, like this movie probably doesn't look like it has Doctor Strange in it enough. Uh, but like we'll see how that all eventually plays out, and see where that goes. So that could be an interesting bit of content, just review and talk about and what have you. But either way, I think it's about that time to say, let's get into this film. So the beginning of this movie goes on to have this studio, this big huge mansion of a place, and it's under severe storms, to the point where again this sign is to fall over and just be flopping into the air, rocking back and forth. So Frank is to be out in the woods behind this tree, and a woman named Nicole is to make her way out to Frank and just be like, "Hey, what are you doing here? Why did you phone?" Isabella could go on and see us at any moment, and Frank is turning to Nicole is like, "Well, hey, do you have any stuff with you? Do you have any stuff?" Because Frank is jonesing, and Nicole is like, "Well, no, I don't really have much on me, but like, what about Isabella?" And Frank is like, "Well, we had a quarrel." Just the way he delivers this line is just very weird, but also he says like damn her, but it comes off as like danger, and I'm like, what the like, okay, all right, like we're just gonna have some weirdly dubbed delivered lines here. But yeah, but Frank goes on and he states, yeah, we had a quarrel, and she ended up taking my stuff. So uh so that's why Frank is with Nicole, asking if she has any of the snorting of sorts of the bit of drugs. So Nicole is to go on and tell Frank here. It's like, well, I'm sorry, I just don't have any drugs, so you'll have to hold out. Please hold out. So we have Marco that is going on and adjusting the sign. He's taking this ladder out and trying to fix it. And so considering Isabella is now making her way back to the studio and she had forgotten her scarf within this taxi and she goes back for it, that's when both Frank and Nicole have to separate here, because, like, all right, well, Elizabeth seems to be making her way back to the studio. So here is where Isabella makes her way past this gate that ends up again having like the studio name on it, and she takes such a long-winded way to get back to this mansion. And like she's going down these stairs, she's going through this forest, like she ends up in a next country somewhere. Like that's how much Elizabeth is like, god dang, like how far is where she has to go on and make it to her front door. I'm like, Jesus. So, but there is obviously a reason why Isabella is taking quite a bit of time here, because Killer is going to creep up behind her and strangle her and murder her, sadly enough. R.I.P. Elizabeth, or Elizabeth? Isabella, R.I.P. It also is kind of really interesting in this film that I think a lot of the characters' names kind of get Americaned up here. Like, I think Ricardo ends up being Richard, and Franco ends up being Frank. And because I looked through the cast list and there were certain names where I'm like, these don't quite match with what people are saying within this film here. And I was a little baffled and confused. And like there obviously is one model that her name is like Toa Lee or Teo Lee or something like that, and or Teolai or I don't know, yeah, like that. I'm just gonna call her Lee within this film, and eventually when she comes up in this movie, I'll explain who she is. So people who have gone on and seen this movie, or probably seen the cast list will probably know what I'm talking about when this character comes up. So, back with the movie here. So, Killer goes on and horribly strangles this woman, and I mean viciously. It's just like, meow, meow. And Killer goes on and strangles and murders a woman. He murders a folk. And so this woman drops, and so the killer goes on and is dragging this woman for a good bit of distance. One of her chesties almost pops out, and we're like, ooh, yeah. Give me a bit of that cleave, you know what I mean? Give me some of that cleave. But if anyways, I guess we just really need to behave. Because we're not getting a good enough amount of skin in this film. We're just seeing women running around in bras, and we just have to be fine, and we have to be good enough about this film. Not being full on skinity. Skinity. But if anything, so the killer goes on and drags off this woman, and then we see these cute little fountains. And these cute little statues. They're cupids. Whatever. And then we cut to Christina. And she's going on and turning off some lights, some chandeliers, it seems. And then Marco makes his way back into the home and starts talking to Christina, talking about the sign has fallen off again. And Marco asks Christina, hey, do you want me to fix it tonight? And Christina goes, oh, no, like, do it tomorrow in the morning. I'm like, didn't he just go out there and fix it? I'm so confused. And then Marco goes off to get a bit of snorting of some kind of substance. I'm going to go with the Kool-Aid sugar, and then goes on and is to pour himself a bit of beverage. I probably think that that's probably alcohol. Or it's apple cider. Whatever. So, Christina makes her way to Max and goes on and is to say to him, yeah, it seems that Isabella is to be rather late again. Maybe I should fire that woman. And Max is like, well, yeah, maybe you should. Fire that woman. Yeah. I'm sure it's not going to be pointless that you're going to fire this woman anyways, because she's probably going to disappear from the rest of your life, because she's effing dead. But these people don't know that, but they'll know that eventually. So, we have Christina that is going on and doing a bit of business here, as she needs to discipline some of her models. So, Christina goes on and seemingly finds this dress that seems to be out of sorts, and she has to take this dress and she has to shove it in Nicole's face. Dress! So, Christina goes on and shoves this dress in Nicole's face. It's like, hey, look at this dress. Try to take more care of your clothes. And then Christina leaves, and then both Peggy and Nicole are talking, and so, well, yeah, like, maybe she should be less of a bit, right? But then they're like, well, Like it's not our fault that she's just been recently widowed, and we'll come to find that Christina's husband was to be involved in some kind of car accident of some kind, and that'll weirdly be the one thing that connects Inspector Sylvester to Christina. Like, hey, where do I know you from? Oh yeah, your husband's car accident. Oh well, yeah. What a small world, right? Is he still dead? Oh, he's dead. All right. Oh, okay. Well, you know, well, it was nice knowing you. It was nice catching up. So we have Christina to go on and I think do something with this dress. And when she opens this door, she ends up finding out Isabella's bate. And we would, of course, have Christina, who's all in shock. Oh, body! So the next thing we see is ambulance drivers who are hauling away Isabella's seemingly scraped up face. Where was it to be that Isabella was to get a scraped up face? Was it all the choking that was to leave the killer's hands just kind of up and down on this woman's face for choking her? Yeah, I'm trying to figure that out. So we have Inspector Sylvester here that is to make his way to Max as Max offers him a cigarette. It's like, oh yeah, no, I don't smoke. But if anything, Sylvester asks Max is like, well, hey, how long were the lights out last night? And Max is like, well, 10 minutes. It's like, well, how long has Isabella been working with you? Oh, for 2 years. And so Sylvester starts asking Max, he's like, well, like how much do you know about Isabella? And Max is like, well, I don't really know much of her at all. If anything, you're kind of like the wrong guy to ask. If anything, maybe you should ask some other people about her. So we have Christina that is going on and making her way through, I believe, some of the tailors or people that are going on to have fallen asleep for how much prep they are to go on and do in this film. So we would go on to have Sylvester and Max meet up with Christina, and here's where Sylvester ends up asking Christina, like, well, hey, how do I know you? Oh, your husband's death. Ah, jog my memory. And so we have Sylvester that goes on and asks Christina, it's like, well, hey, you know more of the girls better than probably Max does, because it seems that Christina is to be the one who's kind of doing all the heavy lifting within the studio. And like, hey, you should probably know about Isabella and her day to day, right? And so Christina kind of goes on and herself tries to figure a way out of this to just be like, well, um, like this isn't really a boarding school. This is just a studio, and I don't know or care about what these girls do here. And so Christina is just like, yeah, I don't know much to tell you either, but I'm just gonna go on back and just kind of f off. So I'll see you later if you could excuse me. So we have Sylvester who is thrusting his hand into his chin, trying to figure out who he can go on and question next because he's gonna run through the gauntlet of just questioning everybody that he just sees in a room, and it's just like, you probably know something about Elizabeth, God, Elizabeth, Isabella here, right? If I could even get the name of this character correct. It's so weird to say the word Isabella. It's so weird. It just is because it rarely is to be a name that comes up in stuff that I've stated within reviews. So we have Sylvester that goes on and questions Marco. Marco didn't do it. Come on. He's just a dude that has an alibi that was talking about holding up a sign, and Christina had gone on to need him to do that. He didn't go on and murder anybody. He was too busy with that sign bit of business. So they go on and they bring in a guy named Richard. And Sylvester even goes on and questions this Richard guy. And it's like, well, hey, you probably know who Isabella is, right? And Richard is like, well, I only know Isabella because Greta introduced me to her. So I only know her, like, slightly. And we'll come to find out both Greta and Richard actually do have a motive to have killed somebody, which leads to them going on needing to attach themselves to Frank, so that way they all can have an alibi of supposedly all being together at the same time, so it kind of gives them an airtight alibi, even though logically they weren't in the same room together. But like they just have to kind of corroborate their story, and I'll bring that up later when that transpires. So Sylvester goes on and is to take a good long look at Peggy, the only one out of this entire place that seems to be crying uncontrollably about Isabella's death. And so that is, of course, when we see Lee here. So Sylvester is going on and looking at Peggy. It's like, well, yeah, it seems you're the only one that's distraught about Isabella's death. And Lee is looking at Sylvester. It's like, well, yeah, because they were roommates. Obviously, they have been really good friends together. And so Lee is like, leave her alone. And Sylvester is like, well, hey. And Lee tells Sylvester that that Isabella did have a lover. And so Sylvester's like, oh, lover, is it? That can go on and give me some kind of suspect. So, but Sylvester is, I guess, to randomly assume that Caesar is to be the next guy that he needs to talk to here. And be like, who are you? Are you Isabella's lover? And Caesar's like, no, I'm a fashion designer. But then Sylvester is like, well, could you tell me who Isabella's lover is? And Caesar is like, well, it's Franco, or it's Frank. He's an antique dealer. Leave me alone. I told you everything that I know. I'm hugely paraphrasing here, but I'm trying to just be a little bit more fun with this. I didn't do it. I didn't murder this woman. So Sylvester is like, an antique dealer, you say? Well, I need to go to the one building that says the word antiques on it and assume that has to be the guy. So they make it to this building that says antiques. And so Sylvester goes on and makes his way to Frank, and this other investigator comes in and hands Sylvester this this little baggie of a thing that has the cocaine within it. And so Sylvester's like, this movie has to go on to be something about drugs. Because how do these models keep so thin the way they do? It has to be the cocaine. It has to go on to be the white powder. Or I mean, the Kool-Aid? Oh, yeah. Anyways, so here is where Sylvester goes on and starts to question Frank here. And the more interactions that Sylvester will have with Frank, he'll go on and point out to Frank, yeah, you're a druggie. Like, just talking to you, just I get a bit of whiff of like of you twitching and you just like really just being like, I'm suffering here, buddy. I'm suffering. So Sylvester goes on and questions Frank's relationship with Isabella, and Frank is like, "Oh, we were just friends," and he'll go on to admit something, hoping that this detective won't be shocked about it. And so Sylvester goes on and hands uh, Frank this bit of drugs and asks him if he knows what this is. And Frank is like, well, obviously it's cocaine. And Sylvester's like, well, yeah, it was found in your friend's house. Like, do you know anything about it? So Frank is going to be like, no, I don't know anything about, like, what could this possibly be? I've never heard of this before, cocaine, even though I know exactly what it is. So Sylvester is like, oh, okay, all right. Like, well, I'll see you again soon, buddy. Because if anything, I feel that you probably have a lot more suspicions than any of the other people, but I can't book you on anything. So I'm like, you know what? In all honesty, like, if it were me and I was Sylvester, I'm like, dude, I'm gonna book this guy and I'm gonna interrogate him and question him for hours because it's always the boyfriend. But anyways, so let's push on here. So we now have this runway that's going on at this studio, and Christina is getting certain women prepared here, and we have Christina that is trying as much as possible to figure out how to get rid of Isabella's dress, as somebody needs to wear this now, as she ended up getting handed it by either Caesar or Peggy here. So Christina goes on and tries to hand off this dress to Greta, and Greta's like, "Oh no, like, don't be silly. That dress is a bad penny. That dress is cursed. So I'm gonna have no involvement of wearing this dress." So Marco is just kind of off to the side, just kind of like, all right, well, I guess, yeah, it makes a lot of sense, like, that she doesn't want to wear this. And so the next thing we see is that Marco is to just kind of be looking around here, and then he goes off into the corner and does his little bit of drugs here, and then it's like, all right, well, like, let's go back out there and still really logically do nothing in the story. But man, like, why do we have to keep cutting to Marco doing a bit of druggery here? I'm just like, man, Marco, it seems, is doing a lot more drugs than anyone else in this film. And then eventually we'll come to find that he has epilepsy. He's just having these just jerking seizures and what have you here. And like, I guess it makes sense to keep focusing on this guy because he is just going to keel over almost, it seems, with all of the snorting and blowing and and intaking of certain narcotics. Anyways, so we go on to eventually have Nicole that is to put on Isabella's dead person's dress. So Nicole goes on and displays this dress, but they go on to realize that the dress is not a complete set. That also, the dress had come with a brooch. And so Marco's like, well, yeah, I remember Isabella having this dress, and there was a brooch that was attached to it. So we can't go on and put this dress out there without this brooch. We have to take the time and look for this thing. Even if it doesn't really matter, it matters bizarrely. So they're like, well, okay, we just need to look into all these boxes and hope that the brooch is there for some goofy reason. And so as they start opening up these boxes, we have Nicole that goes on and she finds Isabella's diary. And here is where we've unlocked the Holy Grail here. We've gone on to find the first clue. A raging clue. So Nicole is going to be like, hey, I found Isabella's diary. Because I guess for the diary, it says Isabella in big fat letters of nowhere. So Nicole goes on as everybody is just kind of off to the side here, just kind of looking and be like, diary, you say. Everyone has to like personally do the whole like, huh? Diary? And so Nicole starts to go on and read this passage. Listen, everybody. He's a man who's aroused deep and desperate feeling in me. I'm prepared to die for him. And so I'm like, okay, like, probably the wrong passage to go and whip out here for everybody to just be salivating. I'm like, what else? What other fan fiction do you want to go on and read here? So we have at certain points where people are like, hey, like, you probably should go on and just kind of stop reading this because it's very personal. And Christina is going on and being like, well, yeah, like, if anything, we probably should not go on and actually read this. If anything, we should probably give it to the authorities. That makes a lot of sense, right? Maybe that'll go on and clue in who was the killer through this diary. And Nicole takes this diary from Christina. It's like, well, yeah, like, I'll go on, and since I was the one to have found this diary, I'll go on and I'll hand it over to the authorities myself. Because Nicole has her own agenda, so as well does anyone else who is to go on and want to find this diary. And when we assume that Nicole is going to end up with this diary, we will go on and find out otherwise. Also, the killer wants to go on and get this diary as well, because again, he will be ousted. It's also rather interesting how the killer actually, I guess, finds out about the notebook because he's not actually. Maybe that's kind of giving too much away. But if you've gone on and seen the movie and you know who the killer is, yeah, the killer isn't seemingly in this room at this juncture. But anyways, so Nicole goes on and puts this diary in her purse and makes her way onto the runway. As again, people are just kind of eyeballing or eye effing this purse here. So once Nicole makes her way back to this back room of this studio, she ends up getting a phone call from Frank. And Nicole is to go on and talk about the diary that she found. And Frank is like, okay, good, because if there's anything that ties me to this diary, we should probably go and get rid of it, or kind of get rid of the passages. So, like, it kind of definitely goes on and absolves Frank of being tied to Isabella's death whatsoever. And yeah, Nicole is like, well, yeah, definitely, I want to go on it and not have Frank to be connected. So yeah, so Nicole goes on and tells Frank about all this, and then she goes back out, and as Nicole goes back out there, we start to see Christina going on and kind of telling people what to do. And we then have, again, Nicole getting another phone call. Nicole ends up getting to this red phone, and Frank ends up telling Nicole, hits like, hey, I'm Jones, and like, I desperately need you to get me some of them drugs. And Nicole is like, all right, okay, like I'm kind of busy right now. I probably shouldn't leave right away. And Frank is like, I'm suffocating here. And Nicole is like, okay, all right, like, I'll get you this stuff and I'll make my way to you. And like, I'll leave right away. So Nicole goes on and she's talking with Peggy about the situation that she's left in. And so Peggy's like, well, like, if anything, you should try to get out of here without really being seen. So Nicole ends up asking Peggy for her car keys. Peggy hands them over. And Peggy goes on and is to be grabbing Nicole's purse. And Christina's like, hey, what are you doing, Peggy? And Peggy's like, oh, I just have my handkerchief. And I just need to just kind of powder my nose or something. I don't know. She says she just says that she needs her handkerchief, and then she leaves with also Nicole's purse, which isn't probably suspicious at all. So Peggy hands Nicole her purse, and then Nicole is to go on and leave, and then we end up seeing the table that is missing something. Oh no. So Nicole is to be driving her way to this antique store. Oddly enough, on the very bottom of the screen, it says the word antiques. I'm like, huh? But then again, I guess we end up seeing the sign that is to not be done in English that I guess says antiques. So it is what it is here. So Nicole goes on and is to make her way into her glove compartment because I guess she's going to set her alarm in her car. And then Nicole makes her way into this antique store because she seemingly has a key for it. So Nicole is calling out for Franco consistently within this building. And we have at a point where when Nicole enters, the killer ends up kind of going on and grabbing the killer's handout to, I guess, want to go on and adjust some of the mood lighting here. But then he decides not to and then just kind of pulls away here. So Nicole makes her way further and further into this antique thing. It takes a while. Like, she really has to go on and do a brisk jaunt through this entire store because we really need to go on and see everything that Frank has ever collected in his life. And so Nicole goes on to make her way to this very specific room, and all of a sudden she hears a clatter. She hears a bit of a noise, and then she kind of jerks back. It's like, hey, what could that noise be? And so Nicole is to thrust her way downstairs to find out that there are things that are falling over or falling down. And then there ends up being this chain reaction of all these things starting to fall down. The further and further Nicole is seemingly in this darkened like area. And that's the kind of the weak points about this movie, that I feel that a lot of this movie is too effing dark to know what exactly is going on throughout it. There's that one point where the killer ends up grabbing this key, and you would just have to pause the movie just right to notice that, because I'm like, what the heck did the killer grab? And I'm like, oh, he grabbed her keys. Like, I had to pause it just right to know that, because otherwise you would have effing missed it. So the killer ends up coming out of the shadows down this stairwell, and eventually Nicole will go on and see the killer off in the distance in this somewhat green lighting of room. So Nicole is to be running around knocking over every little bit of thing because this area is to just be in such darkness that it's just kind of very hard for her to make sure that she doesn't bump into everything. Plus, also with the killer being after her, yeah, she's not exactly going to go on and be anything but as quick as possible to try and hide herself away from Keeler. So Nicole goes on and finds a seemingly spot that she likes to just hide and seek away from. And Nicole thinks that she's fine in the meantime, but we'll come to find out that Nicole is to get a spear that appears from behind her. And so Nicole's like, oh, so Nicole decides to start making her way further through this antique store to be caught from behind from the killer. So the killer goes on and grabs Nicole and starts jerking away her clothes, having her clothes to now be so tattered that we're really just seeing her bra and then half of her just tattered clothes at this point. Nicole desperately tries to make her way out of this antique store, but realizes she needs a key to be able to do this, and this is going to take up way too much of her time. So we have the killer that comes out of the shadows and is to be choking and grabbing on to Nicole here. And the killer goes on and takes the weirdest item that I've ever gone on and seen to try and do Nicole in. He goes on to take this weird item that is to be very metal in shape and then has like these three like hook like so like imagine here we have this just kind of metalled item and then we just have these hooks that are poking out of it, and like it just looks so weird to me. I've never seen a weapon like this being used in a film before. So the killer goes on to stab into this woman with this odd like device, and then seemingly after that goes on to get to her purse, rummaging through it, realizing that the diary isn't there, so he takes the keys instead. So we have the killer again dragging this body and having a knight statue that falls on top of it. And then the killer goes to the car and tries to start the car, and then the car alarm goes off. And we have a gas station attendant that goes on to nearby hear this car alarm and is to write down the license plate. So the following thing we see here is Peggy getting out of a taxi cab and making her way to this place. She's to be met by Marco. Marco, a guy who it seems is to be wanting to protect Peggy, because he'll go on and seemingly soon confess to her that he has fallen in love with her. But that won't be fairly soon now. If anything, Marco is to be like, well, hey, like I wanted to make sure that you got home okay, and also like is your friend here with you? And Peggy's like, oh no 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 no. So Marco's like, well, yeah, all the more reason for me to want to go on and make sure that you get home okay. So the two of them make it into their way into Peggy's place, and we have Marco that states, yeah, I'm to go on and be a little worried about you being all alone in that house. And then when I'm to go on and see the house, yeah, they probably should be worried because there's all of a sudden all these white um, blankets that are all over the place. I'm like, did she just move in, or like, what's going on with all these blankets? I'm so confused. So Peggy and Marco make their way into Peggy's place, and then there's a woman called Claire that is seemingly going on and mentions that she has kind of finished up with her business for today, and they both Peggy and both Claire go on and start chatting about Nicole and having a little bit of banter back and forth. And Then, of course, Claire goes on and like, well, hey, like, I'll see you tomorrow. And then she leaves. So here is where Marco finally confesses his love to Peggy after Claire leaves. And Marco sits next to Peggy and is to state that he's not well, that he's feeling sick. And so we have at one point where Marco is to try and get into Peggy's purse to try to get a cigarette. And Peggy's like, no, 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 no. Don't go through my purse. Like, I'll go on and I'll get the cigarette for you. And then the both of us will share a cigarette together. So we have the phone start to ring and Peggy answers it. Sylvester goes on and states that he had gone on to find Peggy's car and that it seemed to have been abandoned and stolen and which have you. And Peggy used to state, oh, no, no, I lent this car to my friend Nicole. And so Sylvester is like, oh, well, that's good. So I can go on and come to your place and ask you about all this, right? And Peggy's like, oh, yeah, sure, yeah, come on over. So Marco ends up looking at Peggy. It's like, well, I don't think that it would be good if this inspector would go on and see me with you. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave. And then Peggy's like, okay, well, goodbye then. So the next thing we see after Marco leaves is Peggy makes her way through this diary because she wants to thumb her way through this diary before handing it over to the authorities. So as Peggy goes on and starts sifting her way through this diary, she finds out that Isabella was pregnant and that it seems that she was going on and trying to bribe whoever the father was and just be like, well, yeah, I'll ask for X number of dollarinos from this guy to hide this pregnancy. Because it seems that Isabella was going to go on and go through with it. So, stating that this pregnancy would have gone on and been some kind of scandal. So, uh, it seems that Isabella is going to go on and ask for $2,000 or some kind of cockamamie, like bit of money. So Peggy goes on and has this passage and rips it out of the diary and then throws it into the fire, as well as probably also throwing the entire diary in the fire, because really this could go on and implement certain people into a death and give them motive. So as Peggy goes on and puts this diary into the fire, all of a sudden there seems to be some noise or commotion that is coming by her front door, so Peggy opens it. She opens it to go on and have the killer come from behind her and start thrashing her all over the goddamn place. Man, does this killer just going on and, like, I think he hits the woman and the woman smashes into this bookcase. This bookcase falls over. And then he goes on and grabs Peggy and he's flinging her over this bookcase and goes on to whip out this book and says, hey, where is the diary within him writing this out? And Peggy's like, I burned it. And so that's not good enough for the killer. He goes on and makes his way to the fireplace, thrusting Peggy onto the couch, and starts to make his way through the fire and realizes that seemingly a lot of this diary is to be all good and burnt. So Peggy tries to make her way to the phone, and the killer's like, oh, no, 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 we're going to have none of that. And so the killer thrusts Peggy and starts wailing on her. And then we have the inspector with, I believe, his police siren going off. And that goes on and alerts the killer of the inspector making his way here. And so the killer goes on and is to get back his notebook and put it in his pocket, and then goes back to Peggy, who is not quite dead yet, and is to take her, drag her, and then once he gets out of her front door, throws this woman over his shoulder and makes his way up the stairs. The two inspectors go on and they find Peggy's room and they call out for Miss Peggy. There, of course, is no answer because she's getting a little carried away. So the inspector goes on and notices that there is seemingly a bit of stuff out of place, and so he goes on to correct it and ends up leaving no fingerprints as he has this bit of cloth to do some adjusting here. So the killer goes on and he takes Peggy into this other room that is seemingly maybe be a boiler room or a furnace room. I'm not quite sure. But regardless, here is where we have Frank making his way into Richard's place with Greta. As the two of them, both Richard and Greta, are sharing a bit of beverage as their seemingly butler is pouring some things for them to intake in. And I believe this butler is to go on and have the name Charlie, if I'm mistaken. So Frank goes on and is to talk to Richard and seemingly wants Charlie to have no bit of knowledge of this conversation. So they're like, hey, Charlie, get the f out of here. So here is where Frank goes on and is to tell Richard that there's a possibility that he may be implemented in a murder. And so here is where Frank goes on and turns to both Richard and both Greta and says, like, well, hey, you're going to go on and you're going to be my alibi. Because if anything, you guys have a motive yourself for wanting someone dead also, because you guys are to have owed up a bit of money. And Greta turns to Richard, is like, is this true, Richard? And Richard is like, well, yes, it is true. So Frank ends up saying, it's like, well, hey, is this a deal? Do we have an alibi? And Richard is going to go on and play along with it. So and I think it was a loan from Isabella, I believe. So that kind of implements these people into this murder. So Frank goes on and tells them that, like, so the way they're going to write themselves off here is that that all of them are going to be at the same building at the same time. But Sylvester goes on and explains that both Frank and Richard's alibi won't work out because the time of which that they state that they were together doesn't quite match up to absolve them for when the killing happens, which was around 10 o'clock. So, yeah, not quite to be a perfect alibi. So they're kind of effed in that manner. Plus, Richard plus Sylvester wants to go on and just kind of arrest everybody. So that way, but all he arrests is all the dudes. He doesn't arrest any of the women because I guess he just naturally assumes that, oh, there isn't going to be any women. That's going to be a killer, right? But anyways, back with the killer who's going on and non-stoppingly burning and torturing Peggy here. So the killer makes his way back to this furnace that seemingly is to be glowing red at this point. So the killer is to unblindfold Peggy because I guess the killer was not always wearing a mask, or if they were, there's still this possibility that Peggy could go on and figure out who this killer is for reasons I don't quite understand. So we have Peggy that is consistently telling the killer, like, I burned it, I swear I burned it. And so believe me, believe me. And so the killer goes on and takes Peggy's hand and thrusts it against this furnace that is to be glowing red and is burning her hand. Peggy screams in pain, but really, logically, there isn't anything that she is to go on and reveal beyond that she burnt the diary. So the killer goes on and then is to thrust Peggy's face into this furnace and is to burn her face. And I guess the burns are to be so severe that it ends up killing her, sadly enough. R.I.P. Peggy, R.I.P. So we now go back to Sylvester, making his way to Frank. And because of Nicole's dead body appearing in the antique store, we have Sylvester that is questioning Frank. It's like, well, hey, how is it that exactly she had gotten a key into your place? And Frank is like, well, like, I gave her one. And Frank has to go on and state here that he was to be a former lover of Isabella and that he had moved on to Nicole. And we have Sylvester is like, well, how many other people probably had a key for this? And to this antique store. And Franco's like, well, nobody except me, of course. So Sylvester, here's where he finally goes in on Frank, and it's like, well, like, I figured out that, like, Frank, you definitely have a drug habit, and there is probably a reasoning for you to go on and start killing these people. Because if Isabella didn't go on and have your drugs, then Nicole surely did. And so you're killing these people for these drugs. And that's what kind of Sylvester has it in his mind. And even when Frank is like, oh no, I'm not a drug addict, it's Sylvester's like, dude, I can tell. Like, there are signs all over your face that says otherwise. So Sylvester is to really have Frank be very much a suspect here, and Sylvester goes on and tells Frank, it's like, yeah, you're coming to my office because if anything, you're suspect numero uno right now. So we have some of the inspectors that are going on and looking at this woman's body over this knight statue, and they're doing some adjustments. So here's where they go on and they make their way to the car, and they question the guy who had overheard the car alarm and had written down the license plate. So the inspectors go on and they lay into the horn, and the gas station attendant mentions how long the horn was going on. So they're like, oh, so whoever it was that got into this car here had gone on to know about this car alarm and know exactly where to get it. So whoever was to get into this car knew about this. So yeah, so there has to go on and be a person that knows about this car, and so that is to go on and narrow down who exactly the killer can go on and be. So the next thing we see here is Sylvester bringing Claire back in, and is to kind of have her eyeball some of these people here, and Claire is to be asked by Sylvester. It's like, well, have you seen any of these people who have gone on and possibly been in Peggy's car, and we have at certain points where Claire is to talk to Max, and then we go on and have Claire say like, well, yeah, I saw him in Nicole's car, and so like they kind of just tie in Max here for if he has no reasoning for actually going on and having no real connection with these women. It's like, well, hey, he was in the car once. So we have Caesar that goes on and starts to get upset, and all of a sudden this ends up getting an argument or a screaming match between both Caesar and both Marco here, to the point to where they're almost fighting one another. And we go on to start having these guys have an argument that deals with accusing one another of murder. And we have Marco that goes on and mentions how like Caesar is to go on and hate these women because he can't go on and be with them. And so that gives him all the reason in the world for wanting to go on and be a murderer here, because he's just not getting laid by these women. So it's like, murderer. So all of a sudden Marco gets so wound up that he starts having this seizure, and he falls to the ground and he starts jerking around. So they haul Marco away, and we have Sylvester is like, did anybody know that he was epileptic? And so, and it didn't really seem that anybody really knew. So Sylvester goes on and says like, well, goodbye, Claire. Like, I think our job has been done here for this day. So Sylvester just goes on and decides that he's going to go on and book all of these guys just to kind of see if the killings stop. And so, but we have Frank and we have Richard, and they're like, well, hey, we have alibis. Like, you can't put us in jail. And this is where Sylvester goes on and says, like, yeah, well, the time that you guys were together doesn't coincide with the time of the death. So, yeah, your alibis don't hold weight. So I'm going to arrest all you guys, too, because I just like arresting people. So, the next thing we see here is Christina is with all the ladies, and they're in the studio, and Greta ends up mentioning how she's scared and she's willing to be the one that admits it. And Christina ends up telling Greta, it's like, well, hey, don't panic. Like, come on. Like, yeah, man, woman, yeah, man. Don't be stupid. Like, if anything, the only killer is to probably be a dude, right? It can't be a woman. Slowly but surely bring the knife up to your head and. Anyways, so we have Christina that makes her way to the phone and finds out from Max that he's being arrested, being held. And Christina's like, oh, okay, all right, well, so Christina then relays the message that it seems that all 5 of the men were all to be arrested at the same time, and that the police believe that one of them is to be the murderer. So the women slowly but surely are to be like, well, can we just go on home then? Because if anything, like if any number of these people are probably the murderer, then like I think we'll probably be safe if we just go on home. So everyone starts to say goodnight to everybody, but Greta is just kind of hesitant about going on and making her way home, because she's like, well, if I go home, I'll be all alone, and I don't know if I want to go on and make my way back to my house. And if anything, I guess Greta doesn't really realize that she has her butler Charlie there, but I guess it really doesn't matter. So but Greta is trying to go on and trying to get somebody to come to her place with her, and Greta goes on and talks to Lee, and Lee doesn't want anything to do with it. Like, no, no, no. So we have Lee that goes on and says, like, I'm sure that one of these guys that they had gone on and booked is to actually be the killer. So if anything, no killing will be happening tonight. So, like, if anything, Greta, you should be fine. And Lee leaves here. So Christina talks to Greta. It's like, well, hey, like, don't be frightened. Like, just go on home and don't be a baby about this, Greta. Like, I know people are starting to drop like flies, but hey, don't be a baby. Come on. So Lee bizarrely is to be sitting or is to be like standing. Maybe she's leaning. Maybe she's lurking. Maybe she's just doing a thing here. And Lee is to be next to this car, and then she leaves, I guess to maybe rouse suspicions that maybe Lee had something to do what ends up happening to Greta's car. And Greta's poor choices of how to logically get out of the parking spot that she's in within this movie. So Lee then leaves and makes her way into her car, and then Greta enters outside and gets into her car. Greta goes into her car and she tries to parallel park out of the car or reverse parallel park, and she smashes into this tree and then she drives off. So Christina goes on and starts making her way through this huge mansion, this studio, this whatever it is. And at some point, we all of a sudden have a mannequin that falls off to the side. And Christina's like, oh, mannequin fell. And then she just continues to walk and locks this door. So Greta goes on and makes her way back to her house as Charlie is to go on and say, like, well, hey, do you need anything, Miss Greta? Or Greta, or whoever you are. And Greta seems to want some tea, and then Charlie's willing to go on and do that for her. So Greta goes on to need to open up her trunk and ends up finding a dead body flinging out of sight of it. And this is to, of course, go on and implement Greta into possibly being a murderer of some kind. So Greta's like, hey, no, 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 no. This isn't going to happen to me. And so Greta goes on and decides that she's going to haul out this carcass and drag it through her entire house and try to find a shady spot to hide this body in. And then when Charlie comes with the tea, like we have Greta that has blood on her dress, and she's trying to hide this away from Charlie. But like, hey, go on and go. I'll definitely take my tea and make my way to bed for tonight. So Greta goes on and starts unsheathing her clothes and getting into her nightie as she tries to wipe her hands of all the blood that she is to have had upon after dragging this dead body into her home. So sadly, this shady spot that this body is to seemingly be hidden in, it seems that the head is to be poking out to where obviously anybody and their brother can go on and probably see this dead body's head that is to have been laying so severely upon the ground. So the killer is to go on and is to shuffle off this head to where it's to not be seen into frame. And so the next thing we see is Greta is to, I believe, overhear a harp playing. and she makes her way downstairs. Greta is to have severe suspicions that maybe the dead body could probably have something to do with this harp playing. So Greta goes on and makes her way back to the dead body. Greta is to shuffle off the shady spot to then find the body fall on top of Greta. And the next thing that is to happen after that is the killer is to appear from shady spot and is to make his way to grabbing this this cushion casing, this cushion pillow, and gets on top of Greta and suffocates the life out of her. So now there are to be two dead bodies. So the next thing we go on and see is that these two bodies are stacked one on top of the other as the inspectors are looking on at these dead bodies. And we have the inspector to go on and be like, yeah, this is some kind of homicidal sexual maniac. And now we have to go on and go right back to the drawing board of who the killer could quite possibly be. So, because any of the dudes that were to go on and possibly be the killer, yeah, I guess we have to rule them all out because someone else is dead now. So, one of the officers go on and tells the detectives here, or the inspectors here, that he had gone on to find certain footprints that are to be both connected to this home and a scene of a crime that is to also be tied to this place, or to this string of murders. So the inspectors follow this officer and they ask him, I was like, well, hey, like, do these footprints perfectly match together? And they're like, well, yeah, we definitely gone on to make a cast of this footprint and it perfectly matches. I was like, okay, all right, well, like all these deaths must all be connected to one another. And so Sylvester goes on and tells another inspector that they have to release all of the men because it seems that they all really do have a really solid alibi, and Sylvester realized that he had provided them with one. So the next thing we see is all the men making their way to get all their personal effects, because of course they're all resolved of them possibly being a suspect to this murder. So here's where we go on and we have Max, and he goes on to get his little notebook, and the notebook is to be the exact same as the killer's, because there's obviously a reason for that. So Max goes on and takes this notebook, and so the next thing we see is Lee going on and looking into a mirror, and Lee makes her way to Max and goes on and tells him, hey, because it seems that everybody's dropping like flies here, I should probably go on and get my way out of Dodge. Like, so Lee is going on confessing to Max that she wants to travel to Paris and that she's going to go on and try to get the heck out of here before she ends up getting killed to dead. But yeah, not going to work out, Lee. Place your bets how long this person is not going to end up being so quickly to be dead in this film compared to all the other ones. Yeah, she is going to die so ridiculously quickly. Like, they don't take the time or effort to do anything with this girl, really, compared to all the others. So, Max goes on and says, like, okay, it's cool that you're going to go on and go to Paris. Like, if anything, I remember my time in Rome and this place and that place. And so, Max goes on and tells Lee here, it's like, well, hey, well, goodbye then. So, We have Max that goes on to lock his doors in his room and opens up this secret bookcase, trots down through this stairwell, and then goes on to make his way to where Peggy was being held. Because we come to find out that Max is to have been one of the killers. And so we reveal that Christina is to have known that Max was the killer. And so Christina goes on to tell Max here that she was the one to have gotten rid of Peggy's body, and explains that Christina had dumped Peggy's body into Greta's car, and it seemed that Greta was to go on and do the rest of the legwork to make this body kind of disappear. So, in turn, Christina had gone on to take out Greta as well, because, like, yeah, might as well kind of complete the set here of all these models getting killed. So, Christina says that she had done this for Max because it could give Max an alibi so he would be ruled out as the killer. So, Max says it's like, well, perfect. And it's like, well, yeah, perfect, but horrible. And Christina's like, well, yeah, I don't know how I did it, but I did. Uh, and Christina says, like, yeah, I never thought I would have the strength to kill, but I did it for you. And so, because we find out that Christina and Max were going to end up together, that they're both going to end up getting married together. And eventually, Christina realizes that Max wanted to marry Christina so quickly. And, like, it seemed that they have kind of left their relationship fairly secret, that no one really knows that they're both to be married so quickly. But also, Max wanted to go on and kill Christina, probably for the money, right? So, we have both Max and we have Christina, and they're kissing and they're making out. And here's where Christina talks about her husband's death, and that her husband's death wasn't an accident, and that probably has some tie in with Max. And and let me pause here for 1 second. So Isabella was to go on and find out that the murder that was to transpire with Christina's husband was to really be the reasoning for her going on and wanting to blackmail both Max and Christina. But the more that Isabella was to get, she was just to continue to ask for more money, more so eventually they had to go on and they had to snuff out Isabella, because they were going to just continue to pay her out forever, to pay out for her silence, because it seems that Isabella was to be the only witness to this perfect crime of them snuffing out Christina's husband. And so, and that's why they started to have to go on and kill Isabella, but they had to kind of make it as to just be like, well, like, we can't just kill her. It would cause too much suspicion. So if anything, like, killing more people would just kind of make this just be just a pattern of killing. So we have Max that is to go on and state here that there's a possibility that they need to go on and need to find a solution because the way in which that this person is killing people, that Christina is to set it up as some kind of maniac of sorts, that they need to figure out a way to write off this killer, or otherwise they'll never stop looking for him. So Christina goes on and asks Max, like, well, hey, what do you want to do? And Max says that they need to kill one last time. So we have Max that says to Christina, it's like, well, yeah, you're definitely going to have to be the one that does it because if anything, everyone's kind of looking out for me. So, as well as Max is to go on and be like, well, hey, I'll create the perfect alibi for you. So, they go on and they set up that they have to kill uh, Lee. And Max goes on to tell Lee or to tell Christina that the death has to look like a self death. And if they go on and they do that, they can implement this woman as probably being the killer, and then all of this will finally be resolved. And Max is to tell Christina, like, yeah, like after you go on and after you kill her, you can just dump your mask and your costume off to the bedside, and then they'll implement her in all the killings. So the next thing we see is the killer is to be thrusting Lee into this tub, drowning her. Then goes on to cut her wrists, and then Christina takes off the costume, and she takes off the mask and thrusts this Sweeney Todd blade and cuts the girl's arm. And oh yeah, I guess there is blood that comes out of this tub. Oh, I guess I was wrong about that. So my mistake. There is a bit of blood. So after that happens, we go on to have a ringing at this doorbell, and there's a knocking at the door. So Christina goes on to hurry and take off all of this get up, and we find out the one who is going on and knocking at the door is actually Max himself. So Christina, I think, is a little afraid of Max because realizing here that Max will probably go on and probably want to kill Christina here because she's to be the only one really left that knows that Max is to be a killer or knows anything that's tied to any of this. And so Christina is a little bit concerned of her life because logically, if Christina is to kind of do this woman in, then Max can turn around and take out Christina, and then there's no one of paper trail left that knows what Max has done, and there's no one to implement him. Or, if anything, yeah, like, uh, that's the way to kind of perfectly write off this movie. And so Christina is a little bit of afraid of Max, so she goes on to decide to crawl her way on the outskirts of this building. And as she shimmies her way on the outside of this building, she goes on and seemingly grabs this pipe. This pipe ends up breaking off, and the pipe falls along with Christina. So Max goes on and makes his way through this building and is to need to go on and make his way into this green box of sorts. He ends up having to use this knife to open this. And so Max is to go on and find a bunch of Christina's jewelry. And Max is to go on and overhear a sound, so he makes his way back out of this studio. And when he returns back to this green box, all the jewelry is gone. So Christina is to go on and be quite upset with Max because all that Max really cared about is the money, and he didn't really care about Christina. So that's where Christina goes on and says, like, yeah, there definitely was a reason why you tried to marry me so quickly, right? And so eventually the two of them end up in a scuffle with one another, and eventually this leads to a shot being fired, and we assume, okay, who's going to be the one dead here? Is it going to be Max? Is it going to be Christina? Come to find out, Max is to fall over and die here. And so Christina goes on and makes her way to the phone to try and call Inspector Sylvester. The only thing is that Christina, I believe, from her fall, is to still have really so severe of injuries that at some point she doesn't last long enough to complete the phone call and goes on to instead fall on top of Max and dies here and has the phone kind of just dangling off from the hook. And then the movie ends up stating fine or Finn or whatever to just say that this movie is now ended. And so I probably can go on and get the heck out of here so I can upload this for today and go on to go about my normal common day to day. So thank you for watching this. Thank you for going on and listening to this whole layout of how this all played out. Yeah, there was obviously some mistakes that I probably made in the early parts of this review, but regardless, yeah. Like, I think what I was trying to say with the whole blood thing is immediately when this girl was to have had her arm be cut open, there was no blood that poured out of her arm right away. But then afterwards, I guess there was blood. So it's like, oh yeah, I guess there was blood coming out of this arm, but it just kind of was a very delayed reaction here, which just didn't make any sense to me. To where I was just like, okay, where is the blood? And it's like, oh yeah, there was blood, but it's just like, yeah, it's just a simple mistake that I made. So with that said, I'm going to get the heck out of here. Let me know in the comments below if you liked this movie, hated this movie, or just go on and realize that you spent so much time needing to hear me talk about it that I'm sure this was to logically be one of those movies that you're just like, man, why did he take so much time to talk about this? But I just enjoy this kind of layout of review of talking about stuff like this. So I'm like, F it. Let's just go on and just fully fledgedly continue to do this kind of film, even though I'm sure a lot of people will probably at this point just like shorter videos. I'm starting to realize that like the shorts are just doing just really well, regardless of actually seemingly what most of those are, but every once in a while I'll still get like a really small bit of views on stuff. But if anything, I'm just grateful anybody's going on and checking out any of this content. Regardless of what it actually is, because that really does help out the channel. It helps out me, the person who's going on and doing all this content and taking the time to do it, regardless of also eventually the comments, either positive or negative. because those end up going on and be like, yeah, of course that's going to happen at some points with certain content, because people have their own very specific ways of of talking about certain things. Even though I'm to go on and just be like, well, like, okay, all right, like there's nothing um, really of much that I can go on and just like say to that, just be like, well, whatever. Like, I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing and living how I'm living, and I hope that everyone is just to go on and find some positivity in that, and hopefully people will go on and enjoy finding some of these titles, regardless how weird and random they are. Because I'm continuing to just find these bits of content and just find how positive or negative or at the end of it all, how these all play out. So without a doubt, thank you for watching this, and hope you'll continue on this weird and wacky journey that I go into all these bits of content on. So with that said, I'm going to take out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody.